Welcome to the Sideline. I'm Andy Katz. Well, this is going to be a home for a lot of original content in college sports and beyond. Now, of course, you're going to get a lot of that similar content that I produce for NCAA platforms, for the Big Ten Network, and other places. But I needed a home for a lot of those interviews with the newsmakers in this space. So where are you going to find it? Right here at the Sideline. Let's get to it. And welcome everyone to a preseason chat. I'm Andy Katz, pleased to be joined by Texas head coach Sean Miller. And Sean, wherever you've been, you've had great success. A couple of stints at Xavier, of course, tremendous success at Arizona, now at Texas. You've been there now for a few months. How settled in are you?
I'm getting settled in. Yeah, we're almost at the 6 month mark. I would say that in some ways, Andy, it's gone by super fast, and then in other ways, you feel like you've been here in a lot longer. I simply because taking over a program, especially of this stature, there's a lot that goes into it. And this past spring, with the new legislation coinciding with the change, I think made those 3 months. Really seem like 6 months by themselves. There was just a lot of change across the board in the industry and in college basketball. So we got through that, excited about the future and really honored and very excited to be here at Texas.
What was your view of the Texas Longhorn program when you were at these other spots, even maybe back when you were a player, but certainly when you were at Arizona and Xavier?
I think everybody looks at the University of Texas as a giant. I mean, it's a world-class place. What stands out for me the most right now, Andy, is just Austin, Texas, the scope of it. I think it gets put into the really a large and a great college town, but as you're well aware, it's way bigger than that. At this moment, it's America's 10th largest city. It's grown in the last decade, maybe as much as any city in our country. So that's the backdrop of the campus. I think that I'm at the new Texas, though. When you consider we're in the SEC, that's only been in place for 1 year. And in the basketball space, we have an arena that, really can blow you away. It's on campus. It seats 10,700 people, and it's state of the art, the Moody Center. And if you've been in here, you know what I'm talking about. It's one of a kind. So I think when I say the new Texas, those couple things make what has always been, very good even better.
I'm not saying you didn't have alignment where you were, but I know there is alignment where you are.
Mm.
And in this new world, president, AD, coach, um, it- everyone has to be on the same page because you guys are dealing with things thrown at you right and left constantly. In 6 months, how would you judge the alignment at Texas?
It's the gold standard. It's amazing. And I would say that the alignment in today's world of college sports actually starts with the conference you're in as well. And I find being in the SEC and just the alignment there from Greg Sankey down. And obviously I work for, the best athletic director in America, Chris Del Conte. What he's been able to do here on this campus, growing the football program, again, taking something that's always been elite and special and putting it on even a different stage and platform. If you're here, it's like there's cranes everywhere, Andy. Like you can't go a block without seeing something new being built. And I think that's a credit to the conference, the university, the state of Texas, and certainly I think the vision to be great across the board. This weekend we had an official visit. You go to an 11 a.m. tip-off or a kickoff against San Jose State, and it's the first time that I've been at a Texas football game. There's over 100,000 people, all dressed in burnt orange, cowboy boots, cowboy hats. It's quite a scene. And then the next day at noon, our volleyball team, they had a match against Stanford in the Moody Center, and it was sold out. There was 10,700 people, and again, everybody dressed the same. And I thought being at both of those places, like how many places are there that can do what just happened here? And it's an early fall day in September. So, yeah, there is an amazing, your word is correct, alignment. Even the other coaches here on campus, you go into the volleyball, Jared Elliott, Hall of Fame coach, right? Bob Bowman, our diving coach, just won a national championship, and he was Michael Phelps's coach. I went to a baseball game in the spring, and Coach Schloss is over there, and he wins the SEC in year one. So there's a lot of greatness on this campus, and I think that, as the new basketball coach, you feel that, and as the tides rise around you, you have to rise with it.
It's interesting what you said that I don't think people realize when you said 10,000 seats. Texas does everything big, but, and I know you weren't there in the planning stages, but I love the fact that they didn't think too big with
Yes.
their basketball stadium. Not to criticize Tennessee, but as an example, like, 24,000 at Thompson Bowling, before Rick Barnes, they had trouble filling it. It feels like they actually did this right, not to try to just, oh, we got to be big, we're Texas. No, let's do it right, make it a little bit more intimate, pack it in, make it more intimidating. Not everything has to be monster size.
They got it right. You're exactly. They hit the sweet spot. They really did because number one, our arena is on campus. It's not off campus. It's not in downtown, and that makes it very attractive for our students. And at the same time, to your point, in basketball, college basketball, 17 home games a year, roughly, we all play. There's different reasons that they start at these bizarre times, 6 p.m., difficult with traffic coming from work during the week, an early start on the weekend, whether it be a Sunday or Saturday at noon, and games spread out sometimes two and three a week, and then you disappear. So I think catering to your fan base, but in particular, the students, making sure that they have an elite setup when they walk in the building, that they have a place to really enjoy themselves in the game, and the Moody Center is giving them that.
All right, so roster management, another thing that has changed dramatically. Even when you were doing some media, you're back to Xavier, like it keeps changing. What's your current philosophy on how to build a roster at a school like Texas?
Think the first answer to the question, it's a lot like recruiting. Every place is different. You can't, it's not like you pick something up from where you came from and you just drop it and say, this is how I do it, how we do it. I think you have to really adjust and get to know the place. Texas is very different than, for example, Xavier, small Jesuit private school in Cincinnati, big, huge state university right in the middle of Texas in the SEC. Very different dynamic. So I think for us, there's three things that are very important. One is retention. I think your best players, those that perform already inside your program, that are moving towards their college degree, that are accomplished, you want to get them to come back when it makes sense for them, right? When it's about development and building on what they've already done. So retention's number one. Number two is making sure that the elite, the best of the best in our country, but in particular in the state of Texas, high school players that are being recruited the correct way, that they know that this is a destination spot and it's a place they can reach their goals and dreams. Kevin Durant went here, for example, right? And when you look at the history of our program, Andy, and I think you would agree with me on this, Texas basketball to some degree is very understated. When you look at the NCAA tournaments since 2000, this program has been in 22 NCAA tournaments. There aren't a lot of people that can say that, places that can say it. So I think recruiting high school, not necessarily a class of five, but getting the right two, three, sometimes one in the fall makes a lot of sense. And then the last part is the final ingredient of getting experienced players that have the opportunity to leave in the portal, go from where they are to where we are, and have that opportunity to thrive. That's something at Xavier I thought we did well. And I think it's a blend. It sounds good, but I think the key is then can you put all of that together and really be a cohesive team? And I think that's the charge of today's coaching staffs.
Well, and you didn't coach these guys, but it kind of felt like you did that a little bit with this roster, certainly with Mark and Pope returning,
Yeah.
getting a Wilcher from St. John's who's got experience, bringing in some new guys. I mean, how did this roster sort of, and I know it was on short notice, but mimic sort of what you're trying to do?
We had everything, but I wasn't able to recruit the high school class prior to. We do have three freshmen that I really like. One from our state, John Clark, who's from Houston, who stayed with us, and we're thrilled to have John back. But I like the blend that we have. Kendall Weaver's the other player, and Nick Cody. So it's Nick Cody, Kendall Weaver, Tremont Mark, and Jordan Pope. You add those four together, they all played here at Texas a year ago. That's the retention part. I was thrilled to be able to keep those guys. I think all four will be major contributors to this year's team. Also, it feels unique, but it's the way of the world in college basketball. Lucina Traore and Dalen Swain followed me from Xavier. I think that experience of having played in our system and style at the Big East level will really be beneficial. They've already helped everybody else understand maybe the why. This is why we do things a certain way. And then, in the transfer portal, I like the guys we have. One common theme, they come from winning programs. Cam Heidi's a great example of
Yes, I love
somebody
Cam
that's
Heidi.
played at Purdue, that's played for Matt Painter in the national championship game. You mentioned Sim Wilcher, obviously playing for Coach Pitino. I coached against him, know who he is very well. And we have a big fella from Florida Atlantic, Modest, that I think will come in and at the center position really continue to grow and develop. So I'm sure I didn't name everybody, but when you look at the balance of the roster, one thing that I hope you feel good about when you watch Texas is that we have good depth. We may not come at you with those two, reigning all SEC players that everybody knows, but I do think we have a collection of experienced, good basketball players that we can go nine deep, maybe even 10 deep at times here if we can stay healthy.
I love that you mentioned Heidi, and I should have mentioned him. I always thought he was a sort of hidden gem at Purdue, and so I think he's going to have a great year for you. Last couple things. First of all, um, you know, the schedule, Texas, whoever's been there consistently has played an elite schedule, non-conference. Obviously, you're going to be in Maui, but a couple of those single games, opening with Duke on November 4th, playing UConn, a school you're very familiar with. What was your thought process in adding those?
Well, to some degree, I inherited some of those that were already like UConn, for example, is a return
Oh, that's
game in
right.
a home
Okay.
and away series. But you're right. Look, there's nobody that's going to shoot holes in our schedule this year. I'll start with the SEC, based on the coaches, the performance a year ago, 14 of 16 teams in the NCAA tournament. That alone on its face is intimidating, like 14 of 16. Just think about that. And then also the success the league had in the tournament. You go to the Sweet 16, I think it was seven, maybe seven SEC teams of the 16, and, two in the Final Four. Obviously, Florida wins it. So it starts with that, but we play Virginia at home in the ACC SEC Challenge. We're in Maui, which you talked about. We're at UConn. We play Duke and Charlotte. Those games right there, I think are attractive to our fans, but it will test us. We will grow and develop. I don't think we're going to get through it unscathed, but I do think that when we get to March, we'll be that program that a lot of people say they played a very, very challenging, difficult schedule. They deserve to be considered and looked at in a very serious manner. So, but we will continue to play a difficult schedule.
All right, last couple things. Oh, we know this is going to be new this year. Coach's Challenge. How will you use it?
The number one thing I want to make sure of is that I'm really familiar with how it works. I know it sounds like, the snap of a finger that, oh, we have the coach's challenge. This is what I'm going to do. If you really pressed me for the details of actually how it works, in my mind, I'm still a work in progress, knowing how to do it, when to do it, how it works, the timeout. You can't challenge unless you have a timeout. Do you lose it? Do you not lose it? So I think the first point I would make for you to you is like, I want to make sure that there's not any errors that are made with this new thing that ends up costing us, whether it be a possession or a big play in a game. So I do think it's good for the game, though. I mean, watching the NFL and watching the other games that have grown and evolved, even the NBA, getting it right is what we all want. And I think this helps college basketball be even better in that space.
The two things that won't happen, but they're on the docket being discussed. Four quarters versus two halves and advancing the ball. Where do you stand on those two?
I would love to see both. I think we're the only game that has
True.
two halves right now. There's
Yep.
a reason for that, meaning why is it that all other games look at the four quarters as being better? And I think the women's game has had good results with that. So I would like that and advancing the ball, no doubt. It allows more things to happen in a quicker time frame. The up 10, down 10, that might as well be up seven, down seven if you're able to advance the ball. So I think it adds an element of strategy that will make, again, what's already very healthy and great. Our game even better.
Sean, love that you're wearing that burnt orange. It's certainly going to be a great year to track. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Sandy. Always great being on with you.
Thanks for watching and listening, everyone. And as always, you can follow all our social media content at the Sideline with a K. Our content appears on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and of course, YouTube, TikTok, X, and Instagram. Check out all the content at the Sideline with a K.